Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lana, and this is Lana Yuen Reviews exclusively on the Bur Network. Today we're diving into the cult classic 1988's Lair of the White Worm. Kind of a random pick, but after I saw the trippy poster art for this movie, I was instantly intrigued by the character on the cover. Her comical pose, the expression on her face, the fact that it's called Lair of the White Worm, but she's getting out of a wicker basket like a snake? Or is she getting into the basket? I have no idea. Lair of the White Worm stars Amanda Donohoe as the seductive yet deadly Lady Sylvia, who I immediately recognized from Liar, a baby-faced Hugh Grant as Lord James Lambton, the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi as Angus Flint, and Sammy Davis. But not that Sammy Davis, as Mary Trent. The film is directed by British filmmaker Ken Russell, whose unique yet controversial style is best known from movies like 1975's Tommy, 1980's Altered States, and 1971's The Devils, all of which have been recommended to me by producer husband, and I plan to see them as soon as I recover from whatever the hell it is that I just watched. On a farm/Airbnb run by Eve Trent and her hilariously overdubbed sister Mary, a young Egon Spengler type, an archaeologist named Angus Flint, discovers a large prop-like skull, which looks like a giant snake head to me, but what do I know? The skull is soon found to be that of the fabled Lambton Worm, a mythical beast slain generations ago by Hugh Grant's ancestor, for which the town still sings the ancestral punk folk songs of its vanquishing. The predacious Lady Sylvia Marsh soon takes an interest in both Flint and the virginal Eve, hinting that the vicious Lambton Worm may still live. This is your official spoiler warning, but it's pretty light spoilers until the very end. However, if you love bad movies and you like Ken Russell films, you might want to save this one for yourself. And with that, let's dig in. This being my first Ken Russell experience, I wasn't sure what to expect. When the film opens on Angus as he unearths that comically large skull and lets out a manic yeehaw, the camp was instantly apparent. Like, pack your bags and grab your marshmallows level of camp. But don't get me wrong, I love bad movies, and this isn't necessarily the worst I've ever seen. Oh my God! But it has a certain je ne sais quoi that only a few will really appreciate. Be it the script or possibly the direction, most of these scenes come across as if you're watching a live stage play. Actors often stand in place during long static shots, side by side, facing the camera to spew out lines at each other. And it's not just the actors, but the sets themselves. Take, for example, the final confrontation with Lady Sylvia in the cave. It's extremely small, it's cheaply lit, and is covered in styrofoam rocks. I was seriously concerned whenever the actors might bump into something from the set and knock it off during the final battle. Now, I know that sounds negative, but to me, it was extremely entertaining. As for our protagonists, they're actually quite fun to watch. Lord James is hamming it up and loving every moment. The way he talks through his teeth and holds his nose up at the common folk is pretty fantastic. He comes across as this smug rich boy, but at his core, he's a good guy who's destined for greatness, which is how I like to imagine Hugh Grant sees himself in real life. Angus plays the more straightforward, geeky buddy role, but he is just as fun to watch as he uses his powers of science to figure out just what the hell is going on here. And wow, this guy has a great Scottish accent. Or English accent. His accent is great. I mean, I could listen to him read off the phone book all day.
Scots, please. Scotch is a drink. Wouldn't say no to one just now.
And as for Mary and Eve, they're pretty standard as far as female supporting leads go, but I especially liked Mary. The director's choice to have her talk and move like a young girl, it made me laugh a little more than it should have. I mean, she's like a 30-year-old woman and she is way too excited about pretty much everything. But of course, the real standout here is our evil countess, Lady Sylvia. When she's not in snake form or completely naked, her outfits are always on point. Her dresses, hats, footwear, accessories, she looks like she shops at the same place as Catherine O'Hara from Beetlejuice. Lady Sylvia is so thirsty and desperate, and yet despite her sexual nature, she still has to trick her prey. And she does not discriminate. She'll take just about anybody. Cops, Boy Scouts, young women, and her one-liners are my favorite.
Are you into any sort of banging?
As are all of her snake-related activities, like playing snakes and ladders and sleeping in wicker baskets. She's just hysterical. There is some wonderful intentional humor, or at least I think it's intentional. I mean, the bagpipe scene, that's gotta be a joke, right? Like when Angus shows up in a kilt to lure out the snake cop. That scene goes on for so long, Angus actually has to stop and catch his breath. And does he need to be wearing his kilt for this? His friends were all just kidnapped and he had time to go put on his outfit to play the bagpipe? Maybe it's required for the performance. I have no idea. There are a lot of funny shots of snake-like objects, Sylvia's unquenchable yearn for the dance, and I especially liked that scene where Hugh Grant's marker was lifting a little bit incrementally as the cat fight intensified. Even the punky folk band that sings the Lambton Worm theme, I can't tell if any of this stuff is supposed to be funny or not, but it is. Well, the Hugh Grant marker thing is definitely supposed to be funny, but the rest of it, I really can't tell. Even with its lower budget, the makeup team does a pretty phenomenal job with what they're given. Instead of Dracula's iconic fangs, we instead get snake fangs, and they're great for biting, but also perfect for spitting psychedelic projectile venom. It makes for a very fun time as Sylvia attacks her victims. We also get some great practical effects here. One lady actually gets cut in half, and she's still flailing and flopping around on the ground, all of her extremities still moving. There's a worm puppet that is used in both the dream sequence and the final sacrifice, which looks a bit like a mix between the baby xenomorph that pops out of that guy's chest in Alien and the asteroid worm in Star Wars. Definitely dated by today's standards, but I found it charming nonetheless. I really love Ken Russell's visual stylings. It's like an intentionally bad green screen, but with artistic purpose. The raping of the nuns was a bit gratuitous for me, but you strap on that conical dildo and you've got yourself a f***ing party of biblical proportions. Overall, I felt like there were either too many or not enough dildos in this movie. Sylvia clearly knows how to wield one, and in the end, we even get her to strap one on, she's ready for the ritual, and then decides, oh, not enough time for that, and just takes it off. What a gigantic letdown. For a movie only 93 minutes long, it does feel like it drags in some stretches. Again, mostly during long conversations taking place in little cottages, oddly well-lit caves, or just talking over the phone. And as unintentionally funny as this dialogue can be, it's hard to keep focus when it just keeps going on and on without any interesting blocking of shots. I suggest keeping your phone ready, just in case you want to surf the socials whenever you get bored. And when it comes to the plot, it's pretty damn run-of-the-mill. I mean, there's just really not much to sink your teeth into. Even with Ken Russell's changes to the original Bram Stoker story, this watered-down version of Dracula was just destined for failure. I mean, it really is Dracula adjacent, isn't it? Even down to the antagonist's hate and perpetual fear of crucifixes. It's sad, really, because there are some really interesting visuals and ideas here, something that Ken Russell is known for. But in the end, it just couldn't save the movie for me. Let's talk about that ending. The twist was laughable at best. I put it in quotes, but it was a twist. It was just not good. The idea that Angus could get an antivenom made so quickly to cure all the people who had been so recently bitten was pretty far-fetched. They even go a step further when he gets a call from the lab assistant saying that there was a mix-up with the vials. So then we get this extended scene of Angus riding in the car with Hugh Grant, and the audience is left to wonder, will he turn? Of course he f***ing will. It's so on the nose. I prefer the will they won't they turn ambiguity of better films. Like the end of John Carpenter's The Thing. That's how you end a f***ing movie. Well, there you have it. This seems to me like a perfect pick for Mystery Science Theater to rip on in the 90s. It's cheap, it's campy, it's weird, it's full of soon-to-be celebs, and a villain that will not soon be forgotten. So I totally understand how it achieved its cult status, but for this film critic, it didn't really hit for me, but it has gotten me interested in more Ken Russell films, so win. So what do you think of Lair of the White Worm? Is it worthy of its cult status? What other Ken Russell films should I watch? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time. Already confused. What is this movie? Which makes for fun. The baby xenomorph. I don't say xenomorph very often. Because of a baby xenomorph. Baby xenomorph. Woo! Xenomorph, 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 morphin, xenos. I'm very much scientist, yes.